All right, if you're watching this video, it's because we didn't make it back for Saturday night service. I want to apologize for that, but I'm glad we had the opportunity to record this and share it with you. I want to begin tonight's common sense on the debt trap by asking a question. Why is it that when it comes to debt, we live in such denial? The average American household with at least one credit card has nearly $15,950 in credit card debt, according to data from 2012. And the average interest rate will run from the mid to the high teens at any given time. This was recorded in the CNN Money magazine in 2012. There are signs that the higher education costs that we're experiencing right now, combined with the tepid job market, are causing a new strain for people who have financed school through borrowing. The proportion of seriously delinquent auto loans is lower than it was 5 years ago. Credit card and mortgage delinquency rates are only slightly higher, but we're finding now that student loan delinquency rate though has risen from 7.55 in the second quarter of 2008 to 10.9% in 2013. These statistics according to Neil Irving Washington Post. Our text for tonight is taken from Proverbs, and the first verse we talked about it last week that we all know, verse 6, teach a child to choose the right path, and when he is older, he will remain upon it. But the verse right after that, verse 7 reads, just as the rich rule the poor, so the borrower is servant to the lender. Let's begin by talking about 6 signs that you are in the debt trap and in serious trouble financially. Sign number 1, when you are living with credit instead of paying with cash. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 27 says, don't withhold repayment of your debts. Don't say some or other time, if you can pay now. There are 2 problems with us using credit to finance debt. Number 1 is it shows a lack of contentment, that we are not happy or pleased with what we have now. And secondly, it presumes on tomorrow. Study after study has shown that if you use a credit card, you're going to spend 23% more than if you used cash. I said that it shows a lack of contentment first, and secondly, that it presumes upon tomorrow. We don't know what tomorrow will hold. We don't know whether we will have the same job. We don't know whether we're going to be sick or well. And in reaching out or stretching out in credit to pay for something just because we want it now, we can find ourselves in a lot of trouble later. The second sign that you are in debt or in the debt trap is that you're delaying payments or paying the minimum due. Now, if you're missing payments, you're bouncing checks, you're making minimum payments on credit card, you're never going to reduce the principal on that, but you're just trying to cover the interest amount. It says in Romans chapter 13 verse 8, let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. We are only given permission by God to have one continuing debt, and that is the debt to love one another. The third sign that we could be in serious trouble in the debt trap is if you are unable to tithe or unable to save. Unable to tithe or unable to save. A clear sign that I'm spending too much is I can't pay tithe and I can't save. We talked about this last week. I want to share that portion of Scripture from last week with you again. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 10, bring to the storehouse a full tenth of what you earn, so that there will be food in my house. God invites us to test me, he says, in this, says the Lord all-powerful. I will open the windows of heaven for you and pour out blessings that you need. Proverbs chapter 21 verse 20 says, the wise man saves for the future. We did not live on poverty line when I was growing up, but if you were living in my house and looking out the window, you could see the poverty line from where we lived. It was very close. My parents often struggled to pay bills, and I can remember my mom would say to my dad sometimes, "Well, I paid the last bill, and now we're broke." And my dad would reach into his pocket and pull out his checkbook, and he would respond back to her, "Hey, we still have checks, so we must still have money." And it was kind of a joke with them, realizing that they were squeezing money as tightly as they could to try to provide for us. Money was very tight. And I even remember us getting into some financial difficulty and the struggles that go with that, and seeing that wear a stress with my parents, and being the oldest in our family, carrying around a lot of that. And you might be surprised at how much your children may know about the debt trap that you may find yourself in and how it affects their lives. Number 4 is that you are unable to pay taxes when they're due. Matthew 22 verse 21 says, "Then he said to them, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." When we are unable to pay our taxes, this creates a very difficult situation for us, for our family, and it puts everything in jeopardy. There are many who have started small businesses who have gotten behind in their taxes and wound up losing their businesses for that reason, losing homes due to taxes, getting behind along that line. And so it's a sure sign that we're falling into the debt trap when that's happening. Number 5 is extravagant spending. Extravagant spending. Dictionary defines that as spending money excessively or immoderately, going beyond usual bounds, unrestrained, ostentatious or showy, exorbitant in price or overpriced. Can I tell you something about your car? It's just transportation. It's just meant to get you from one place to the other. It's not reflective of your intellect. Your car is not reflective of your taste. Your car is not reflective of your status or your worth. It's just plain transportation. And we need to see things that way. We need to start living as if we understand that. And can I tell you something about your shoes and about your clothes, as long as I'm meddling in your life? Those shoes are covering, those clothes are covering and protection for you. They cover your body and they protect it. They're not an extension of your personality. They are not a symbol of your good taste. And they are not reflective of the status that you have in life or your value as a human being. They are merely protecting you from the elements. Stop letting advertisers and designers dictate clothing or anything else in your life that you should have, but you know how much money you have, how much cash you have to pay for things that you feel you need or want in life. Live within those means. The sixth thing, the sixth sign that you may be in the debt trap, is looking for get-rich-quick ideas. Now it says in Proverbs that steady plotting, we read this last week, brings prosperity. Hasty speculation brings poverty. Steady plotting brings prosperity, but hasty speculation brings poverty. Can I ask you a question? How many of you have the remainders of a get-rich-quick scheme in your closet, in your garage, someplace in your home? Someplace where you at one time or another decided that if you would get involved in this, that it was going to be great and it was going to make your family rich, or it was going to increase the income that you had and help you not to have financial issues. Well, I'm going to raise my hand because I have the remnants in my closet, in my garage, of opportunities that I had taken earlier in life before I learned this principle of not looking to get rich quick, but minding what it says in Proverbs. Steady plotting brings prosperity, hasty speculation brings poverty. It's a lottery mindset, if you will. waiting for that big deal, waiting for some inheritance, for something to roll in that's going to take care of all the bad decisions that we've made and not only catch us up, but get us ahead in life so that we don't have to worry about finances again. But in truth, we all know that we are the best answer. If we're obedient, we follow God's pattern, we're the best answer for getting ourselves in financially good shape. On the screen for you now, Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 7, dreaming instead of doing is foolishness. 9 steps now I want to give you real quickly. If you find yourself in the debt trap, there are 9 steps that will get you out of the debt trap. Now these are simple steps, they really are, but they're not easy. They're simple steps, but they're not easy. And it all begins with number 1, commit to becoming debt-free right now. It requires that we make a commitment, a decision, a choice, that we have decided that we're going to be financially free, we're going to make wise decisions for our future, and we have to make that decision before we can make any steps of these other 9 steps. It all begins with our commitment that we are going to get financially free, we're going to do it right now. Now, it'll not happen overnight. It's going to take discipline, it's going to take perseverance, delayed gratification. Character is going to be refined through this, and sacrifice. I want to tell you the good news is that while you're working on retiring your debt, God is going to be working on you. He's going to be making a new you as you partner with Him and allow Him to work in your life. Step number 2, start paying God first and yourself second. Deuteronomy chapter 14, verse 23, the Living Bible says, the purpose of tithing is to teach you always to put God first in your lives. Remember last week we talked about the 10-10-80 plan, and this is it really in action. It is paying God first, the first 10%, the first fruits of what comes into our lives. Then 10% for savings. Before you pay bill collectors, before you pay anyone, make sure that you're putting away and saving for yourself and your family. You're going to learn a lot more about this in Financial Peace University, about how to build an emergency fund so that you will be able to take care of your family when crises and situations arrive that will cost you financially. And then finally, learn to live on only 80%. Pay your bills and living expenses out of that 80%. Step number 3 is list all that I own and all that I owe. Proverbs chapter 24 verse 3 says, by wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. You need to understand as exact as possible where you are financially. Proverbs 18:13 says it is stupid to decide before you know all the facts. We need to be able to list all that we own and all that we owe and have a good understanding of that before we can go forward. Step number 4, you need to have a sale. Have a sale. What does that mean? There are things that you own that you need to get rid of. For some it may be as big as a house or a car. And for others, it may be just simply things that you're not using any longer. And those things can be sold. Craigslist, they can be sold in a yard sale. And that money can be accumulated and put towards paying off debt that you have now. Retiring a credit card with the highest interest rate. Putting that away first. And so you need to be able to go through, that's when you're listing the things that you own and you owe, and realize these are things that we no longer really need. We can sell these things and they're going to help us in moving in the direction of retiring this debt. Step number 5, set up a repayment plan. You're never going to get out of debt without a plan. It says in Proverbs chapter 21 verse 5, good planning and hard work lead to prosperity. Good counsel is going to help you in planning. You know, if we have an issue with our back, we're going to go to a back doctor. We have an issue with our eyes, we're going to go to an eye doctor. When we have financial issues, we need to surround ourselves with wise counsel those people who kind of understand those things and can sit down and help us navigate through so that we can build a plan to get out of the debt trap. You have someone in your life that will give you good financial counsel. If you do, you need to go and talk to them. I remember when we were married, when Michelle and I were married, her dad was very solid with numbers and very solid with financial counsel. And we would have issues that would arise, and it was hard to go to him because we knew he was going to tell us to do something that we didn't want to do. You know, we had a little bit extra money, we wanted to go spend it and buy something, but we knew he was going to tell us that we should put that money towards savings, or we should retire some of our house payment, or whatever else. And so it was difficult, but we would drive ourselves to that, to go there and to listen to that solid counsel, because that counsel made the difference in keeping us out of debt. But you and I, sometimes we struggle with counsel because we don't want anyone to tell us what to do. But can I tell you something tonight that, and maybe hopefully not hurt your feelings? If you don't listen to solid, godly counsel right now, you may be listening to bankers and lawyers telling you what you will do later. It's so important that we develop a plan, and a plan that we can work through based on solid and good counsel in our lives. Step number 6, decide to do it in half the time. You say, that's impossible. On the screen right now, Luke chapter 18, verse 27, what is impossible with men is possible with God. You need to believe it, you need to expect it, and then you need to do it. Stop overspending, repay the principal and interest, learn to operate on a financial margin, spend less than you're making. Get your budget in line. Decide to do this in half the time. I counseled some couples over the years that have come up with some ingenious plans on how they can help retire debt quickly. Starting extra jobs or picking up opportunities to help other people with accounting, or maybe cleaning their house or mowing their lawn, and doing these kinds of things for a little extra pay, and taking all of that money and taking it to retire debt that had been accumulated. And they found that quickly that debt was retired. Number 7, add no new debt. Now this really sounds like a senseless step. But after having worked in real estate, I can tell you that it is amazing how many people that are in the process of trying to get approved for a loan to buy a home are also out on the car lot looking for a new car, or are in the furniture shop looking for new furniture. I always have to sit down and have the conversation with them. Don't do anything during this period that the lenders are watching your credit like a hawk. Don't go out and buy any new thing. Don't create any new debt, because you can destroy your ability to get this loan to purchase this home. It's never happened to me, but I've had friends who are in real estate who I have seen that their clients have literally lost the ability to purchase a home because they went out and did some crazy things right before closing, and the lender decided that they were not going to loan them the money to purchase that home. If you're ready, if you are seriously committed to getting out of debt, then I have a challenge for you, but I want to read this passage of Scripture out of Hebrews chapter 12, verse 5, about adding no new debt. Be content with what you have. I grew up in a church. We used to sing a song out of the hymnals, and it said, count your blessings, name them one by one. And that song really was talking about how often we overlook what we have because we're looking at what we want. And God calls us to really, challenges us to daily count the blessings that we have, the good things that we have, and enjoy what we have. We add debt to our household. We also add stress. And those things are unwanted and unneeded. So I have a challenge for you. I want you, when you go home today, if you have plastic and you have got those things run up or maxed out, I'd like to ask you to do something. Take those plastic pieces, cut them into very small pieces, maybe even heat them up in the oven a little while, melt them together, make some kind of something out of them, and then mail them to me or bring them to the church. And we're going to get our creative arts team, and they'll make some artwork out of this. Maybe we'll even do this through Financial Peace University and create some kind of giant statue or collage that basically says we are no longer going to give ourselves over and be servants to a lender, but we are only going to be servants to the living God. Last two here. Number 8, share your plan with your creditors. When your ways please the Lord, He will make your enemies into your friends. And I found this too, and throughout my life, that creditors will work with you. We've counseled a number of people in financial counseling. We've got them to sit down with their creditors. We've been in the room with them to help them with the conversation and to communicate to them that the way things are going, they're not going to be able to pay them back, but they want to pay them back. They feel they have an obligation because they stepped out and signed on the dotted line and got into debt. And so they want to pay this back. But they would say to these creditors, if you continue to charge a high interest rate, I'm not going to be able to pay this back. Here's what I can do, and I can get it paid back in this amount of time. And when you have a plan and you share it with your creditors, the Bible tells us that when your ways please the Lord, He will make your enemies your friends. Those that you thought were against you will suddenly turn and start looking to help you. This is true of tax debt. It's true of credit card debt. It's true in every area that you can find that they will reduce the principal amount, or they will allow for arrangements to make it paid back at a lower rate. And we just have to ask. Step number 9, and the last one, is just stick to it. You turn to a neighbor and just say real quickly, stick to it. You need to stick to it. Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, and let us not get tired of doing what is right, for after a while we will reap a harvest of blessing. If we don't get discouraged and we don't give up. There are points and places where the sacrifice is going to seem too great, and you're going to want to turn back and return to some old habits. But I want to encourage you to stick to it, because the day that you are free of that debt is going to be incredible. You're never going to want to go back. You're going to constantly want to stay completely free and debt-free. We're going to play a song in the conclusion here by the Brooklyn Tabernacle. I'm going to give them instructions to start that song in just a moment. And it just is a song that says, God is more than enough. We talked about tonight how the major problem with debt is that it's bondage. And it's the kind of bondage that you can't escape unless you include God. We have to put God in the plan. He has to be number one. For 30 years of ministry, I've heard people come and say to me, Pastor, I can't afford to give to God. And my response simply is, you can't afford not to. You have to include Him in this process. You can go ahead and start the song now that goes with this slide. God is more than enough. Can I tell you tonight that God is more than enough? You don't need anything else but Him. He's enough no matter what you think you need or want. He is there to supply for your need. As we listen through this song and listen to the words and the choir singing this, talking about the names of God, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Shammah, the God who is there, the God who is a provider, Jehovah Rapha, the God who is my doctor. I want you to, if you want prayer, to come forward tonight. Nick and some of the others who are here are here going to meet you here to pray with you and agree with you. God's going to put you on a pathway and a plan to retire that debt, to get out from underneath that stress. When we get to the end of this song, you're going to hear the Brooklyn Tabernacle praying. And when the pastor comes on and he says, if you need a miracle, stand up, that's where our worship team can begin to play again. But remain here as long as you want, praying and seeking God. He loves you. He's got a great plan. You can turn it up a little louder now. We'll just listen to the music.